Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for creator, badass, comic book man alumni, Kevin Eastman, everybody. Kevin Eastman.
So awesome to be here. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I was going around. Welcome to Memphis, by the way. Have you been here before?
I've not been here before. We're so excited to get down here finally because just the history, but also the get down to see you fans. We try to, when my wife Courtney and I, we plan out our shows each year. We try to hit as many different geographical places as we can, so we get a chance to say hi to y'all. So it's great to be finally down here. So, and I got to get one of these shirts. So he told me where he hooked it up.
Yeah, this is a Lansky Brothers shirt, which if you're from Memphis, you may know them. They're the outfitters for the King, the clothier to the King, they call themselves. These sell clothes to Elvis, Roy Orbison, B.B. King, Count Basie, so legends for sure.
For sure.
And you know, I don't play an instrument. I have no talent, but I can look like I do, right? So, yeah, for sure. So I went to Graceland yesterday, and I was close to Beale Street, and just kind of going through the Elvis thing. You know, he's like pure Americana, and something that you know, Elvis will live forever. Yep. And I was thinking this morning, I think the Turtles are in that same vein for sure. And yeah, it's just. I mean, they may be even bigger now than they ever have been before. You know,
you heard it. Ming said it first. The Turtles are bigger than Elvis.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, it's very kind. You know, and you know, it's what's amazing to me is that you know, first, thank you very much for standing in the line. I have my sarcasm. I always joke. I said I wouldn't stand in line to see me. I'm glad you guys will. But no, what an incredible welcome to come here. You guys turned out. We started signing it a little before 8:30, and I looked at the line. I said, "Who else is here?" Because these guys can't be all for me. But I do thank you very much. And as Ming was saying, it's amazing to me to think that after 40 years, when we started that very first comic book, Peter and I just really wanted to follow in the footsteps of our hero, Jack Kirby, write and draw and tell our own comic stories. And so the Turtles' first comic was done as a one-off, as you know, we didn't think anybody would really buy enough of those to actually do a second one, so we did it as a complete story. And if that's where it started and ended, it was enough for us because we had such a great time doing it. And here we are looking at 40 years next year, and I'm still doing the greatest job I've ever known or ever wanted to do since I was a kid, and it's all your fault.
Yeah, you guys keep spending money on this stuff like it's all your fault.
It is, but thank you. No, it's really crazy to think, like, you know, you have this childhood dream, and I've been one of the lucky ones that, and it is that, you know, the American dream, as you mentioned, is like to get to do something we love and we're very passionate about, and to be able to do that my whole life. And I mean, I was drawing. We got on a plane at 12:30 yesterday, but I was drawing up until 11. Went to the airport, jumped on a plane, and when I get home on Monday, I've got to finish a cover for the next issue, and that's the coolest thing ever because I still get to do that for a living. So.
Yeah, isn't it funny? People like when I come to cons, like, oh, what time do you have to start work? Yeah. I'm like, work? Work?
This is not work.
Yeah, work is, you know, laying bricks or digging toilets or you know, flipping hamburgers maybe, or you know, doing probably what you guys do, like real work. And you know, we're very blessed for sure.
Well, and we've done all those other jobs too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think you and Pete were you were boiling lobsters in Rhode Island. Is that correct?
Yes, I was boiling. I was actually when we did I grew up in Maine, and so the Maine's calendar year runs between, you know, the main part of our calendar year runs between Memorial Day and Labor Day, which is the tourist season, is everybody tries to make enough money to make it through the winter. And so that's what you do. I cooked, I murdered lots of lobsters.
Yeah, just knife through the head, right? Or however the most humane way to do it, I guess.
No, there was always, somebody would always say, like, it would be a couple of times, because it's open, the kitchen was open to the public, so you get to meet and greet and hang out and do
open kitchens, gotta love them.
I know, it's crazy. And they go, somebody would always come in and go, I hear lobsters scream when you put them in the water. And I go, they don't, I've never heard it. So they'd sit and watch, and you put them in this bag and you put them in the water, and there's nothing, of course. And they go, oh, that's because they're underwater, we can't hear them.
Yeah, underwater, no one can hear you scream, much like space, right?
So, but yeah, we did, I think, the first, when Pete and I drew the first comic book, he had 2 different jobs. I had 3, but that's what you did. You know, you sort of
survive, grind, hustle.
Yeah, so that's what we do.
So so I guess it could have been Teenage Mutant Ninja Lobsters, maybe, but it probably wouldn't have worked as well.
No, might have been more like a localized sort of popularity. I don't know. It's like Teenage Mutant
or Teenage Mutant Ninja Crustaceans.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
I love it.
But yeah, I kind of love how you flipped everything. You chose the turtle. I believe you wanted to pick like the slowest and weakest animal in your mind and turn it into something awesome. And it's like, hey, let's make it a ninja. But
yeah, it was because definitely I was a huge fan of Bruce Lee growing up. Just fascinated. But it's like when we finally got cable in Maine, just a couple years ago. No, when I finally got cable, there was a channel out of Boston. One of the top stations there, but they would do, on one Saturday, they would do martial arts theater where they'd show like back-to-back martial arts movies, badly dubbed martial arts movies, and then the next weekend they would show monster movies, and that's where I discovered, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and all that, as well as Godzilla and Gamera and all that stuff. But I was just fascinated by that stuff, and so to me, it's like fast-moving martial arts. I said Bruce Lee was an animal. What would be the stupidest animal, or the silliest? So fast-moving martial artist, slow-moving turtle. It just was a natural joke that Pete and I both laughed.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the spark.
And it worked out.
And it worked out.
I love that like big Asian influence in your life as in kaiju and Asian martial arts, Bruce Lee. So I'm going to take credit for your success. Because as a representative for all Asians everywhere, I'm going to take credit for your success for sure.
Yep. No, it's funny because what's weird is when the turtles started becoming popular, there's a cartoon show and starting to break out from the U.S. into other countries. A lot of people would say, "Oh, the turtles must be huge in Asia because of the cultural influences and all that stuff." And it was weirdly, it was more of the exact opposite because a lot of the Asian culture, especially in Japan, a ninja is not a positive. It's like an assassin. It's a murderer. So we'd have these meetings with these companies interested in the turtles, trying to figure out what was popular about them besides stupid crazy Americans.
And stupid ones, but yes.
But they'd be like, so they're teenage mutant murdering turtles. We don't get it. We don't think it's good for our kids.
Right. It's a bad influence on kids. Like, no, they're ninjas. Ninjas are, they don't always murder. And if they do, it's because they're all bad. That's what you should have said. Like,
but even when the word ninja as a cultural thing was banned in the UK. So when they went into the UK, they were called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. You see some of the early toys that were
right.
Yeah, and they banned the word ninja, and also Michelangelo's use of nunchucks were banned. And so any cartoons or movies that were shown in the UK during that time, they cut those scenes out. So anytime Michelangelo was using a nunchuck, they cut it out.
Wow, that's
weird, right?
Yeah, the hero. Yeah, it just doesn't have the same ring to it.
See, we thought the Asians were crazy. No, the British are,
Yeah.
Anyway.
They got woke way before everybody else did, I guess. So yeah, all right, we don't have to mention that. You did something really cool about 2 weeks ago, which just blew my mind. The formerly known Man's Chinese Theater, I think they call it the TCL theaters now or whatever.
Yep.
You guys did a handprint. You did a handprint ceremony. The turtles are immortalized in front of arguably the most well-known theater in the world. Countless movie premieres, and I think if you go there, you go see the handprints out front of the theater. Kevin and Jay are out there. I don't know if you noticed them out there, but what was that like?
Well, it was that's like so many parts of my life, and certainly any things that I've done with the turtles, and what's happened with the turtles, or what I've been able to do thanks to the turtles. I mean, travel around the world and come to Memphis and hang out with you folks, and that kind of stuff is really wonderful. But the idea of the first time I went to Hollywood, that's the first place you want to go, is you want to see the Walk of Fame and the Chinese theater and all that stuff, and to have the honor to have the turtles. So each of the turtles, and they designed the cement pieces as a slice of pizza for each turtle. So they had their name and each handprint on a slice of pizza. Then I got to sign for Peter and I, because Peter, why we don't see Peter at more shows is he's not been on an airplane since 1986. He literally hates to fly. So I get to sign, Eastman and Laird on a slice of pizza, and that's going to be in front of the theater, which is just mind-blowing. It's really cool. It's quite an honor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pretty awesome. If you want to rewatch it, the whole ceremony is on YouTube. I watched it this morning. Yeah. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's very well produced. It's Hollywood, after all. Yes. But but I mean, the amount of detail and thought that went into it. Yeah, I mean, whole podium, everything. They made it a whole production.
Yeah.
I heard tons of screaming fans. Yeah, which it was pretty packed.
Yeah,
And yeah, the display, it's 5 slices of pizza, which each turtle, we'll never, I don't know who was in the costumes. I don't know if you even know, but they had the turtle costumes. They got
They were real. It was the real turtles.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I'm sorry.
No,
Yes,
I'm
of
kidding.
course, no costumes. It was the real life turtles that you know and love.
I knew it. I knew they were them.
And then it was you, and you're signing, and very cleanly, and that's probably going to be out there for forever.
Yeah, it is crazy to think. It's really quite an honor. It's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
and if you see other people, like I mean, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes are there, but I think like Bing Crosby and I don't know, Sinatra, and like heavy hitters out there.
Yeah, that was
so-
one of the first movies I ever saw in the theater was Planet of the Apes. So I wanted to see Charlton Heston's out there and John Wayne and just all the old movie stars and stuff you've grown up. Yeah, still pretty amazing that happens. So.
Yeah, like I mentioned, icons.
Icon.
Icons. Do you remember getting that call? It's like, hey, like ring ring, hey.
Yep.
It's we so that theater in Hollywood, we want to Do you remember when did they call you? Like, how did they approach you?
Well, it was we reached out because we do a lot of great stuff. Paramount is such an amazing producer of all things Turtles. They own the rights to the Turtles these days. We've been working for them. We sold the rights in 2008, late 2000s. But what's been great is that anything that they've done with the Turtles, they always bring me in. That the Peter's always offered out to Peter, but he's more retired. But they own the Turtles. They don't have to do anything with us, but they have such great respect for the original guys that help bring these characters to life. So I've consulted on a bunch of the movies, the animated series, which was a lot of fun, especially the 2012 series. Plus, I got to be the voice of Ice Cream Kitty, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But then this most recent movie was just a really fun experience because I'm a huge fan of Seth Rogen as well.
Yeah, producer, right?
Yeah, he's the main producer and one of the writers, and Evan Goldberg is Seth's producing partner, who's very funny. They did, this is the end of the. There's so many great.
Yeah.
But Jeff Rowe, as a director, did great. Worked on a number of great projects, including like Gravity Falls. But he did a movie called Mitchells versus the Machines, which you haven't seen. It's fantastic. And so this is his first big feature after Mitchell's. And he's such a Turtle fan. Like, the first time I met him, he was like, showed me, pictures of him when he was, 6 years old and wearing the Turtles Halloween costume.
Yeah.
Had all the toys and had all the stuff. And so you take that kind of attitude with someone that grew up with the Turtles, that love the Turtles, they put the things that they love about him and their passion. And Seth is a long time. I used to see him, before Seth Rogen was Seth Rogen. I used to see him in the comic store on Melrose, Golden Apple. Numerous times. And big, huge fan. So it was a great bunch of folks that produced the movie right from the heart. And the story is just fantastic, very laugh out loud funny. And then you got Jackie Chan as Splinter.
Yeah.
You guys are freaking me out.
Yeah. I mean, what a perfect casting in my mind, for sure. I mean,
Jackie Chan as Splinter. My other favorite was Post Malone as Ray Fillet. Ray Fillet! Oh my God, it was great. And Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko. That was pretty funny. I love your vibe. I love your vibe. But the fun part was how clever the producers were and the writers when they started working on the voice cast and they wanted to cast the voices of the Turtles. They decided to say, why don't we actually cast actual teenagers to do the voices? Because they kept trying to write, I think Seth's early 40s. Jeff is really his early 30s. But they kept trying to write dialogue, kind of hip teenager kind of dialogue. And it was like, we don't know what so.
Right, we're old.
We're old.
So, yeah.
And so they cast teenagers to actually do the voices. But they would they'd write some lines and then they'd have them say them the way that they'd written them. And they said, well, how would you say this? And then so they would kind of do it more like they would say it,
right.
So a little bit more improv. And then they started doing this thing where they would leave the mics on while in between takes, and the teenagers, they all knew each other, the voice actors, and they'd be talking about what they did that weekend or something.
Right.
And so they started getting the vibe and getting the riff of doing that. So it really brings a very unique sort of banter,
right.
having real kids do it. So
right, yeah, I think if you had old people try to write teenage dialogue, like you know it right away. I was like,
Yeah.
Like, LOL, I don't say that anymore, like, or whatever, or like, yeah.
I do, and my family reminds me constantly that nobody says that anymore.
Yeah,
So,
right.
like,
Yeah, I guess we just sound old.
You don't actually say LOL, Dad.
Yeah, speaking of shirts, you're wearing a cool shirt, and then in the ceremony, you're wearing it's like a black and white turtle art shirt. Who's making these? Where do we get them?
It's I want to say, like, it's a weird spelled name here. It's like,
it's a Roosevelt's.
Yes,
Yeah,
Roosevelt's.
Roosevelt's.
The Roosevelt, but it's
yeah.
their brand is
Reflex.
Clueflex. But they started doing this line a couple years ago, inspired, pop culture kind of stuff. And so they started doing these turtle shirts, and man, I just love them because they actually chose like some of the original drawings. And the one I wore at the Chinese Theater is actually a large, full reprint of the very first cover.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like you almost have to stand back from it to see the whole image. But these
Cool,
are so
okay.
great,
Yeah,
and they're really comfortable. And
yeah, if any of you are familiar with Roosevelt's, I don't know why we're plugging them. They're not paying me. I don't know. Yeah,
we're not
I'm
getting a
working
cut.
on it.
Well,
yeah, that's it. But they do a lot of the Jay and Silent Bob shirts too,
Yes.
and they
They
bought
do.
up every cool license. So so that was I was wondering. So
very good.
and I'm trying to get them to send me free
and they're
stuff.
stretchy, so when I eat too much, they sort of still they fill out with me.
Yeah, if we eat too much Central Barbecue, you mean?
Yes,
then
that's
they'll
right.
stretch out with us. That's awesome. Does anybody have any questions? Throw up your hand, and we'll get to you. We'll go with you in the red first. I saw your hand shoot up first. Yes, please stand up, project.
Oh.
I know we're
Uh,
talking about how Turtles is so big because of the movie, but I kind of want to know more about the comics. Last Ronin, was that your idea you took to them, or did they bring it to you, and how did you feel about it, or why do you think this was the time to have that story?
No, thanks. Last Ronin was actually an idea. It came out. Peter and I came with the idea for Last Ronin in 1987, and it wasn't called Last Ronin then, but it was a story that we just finished a very large story arc. I think 15 issues, and wrapped up a lot of stuff that we've been developing. So it had an ending. With that. Okay, now where do we go from here? And that's what we said. Well, where do we go from here? So we started talking about it. I said, well, why don't we write maybe the final story set 30 years in the future, and it'll give us kind of a lighthouse to navigate towards, kind of a concept. And so we wrote what we called the final story, and it was about a 28-page outline. And then that was in 1987, so it was set in 2017, which was funny as I get to the ending part. But the 1987 was the first year that we started working with Playmates Toys and on the cartoon series, and that suddenly, so this idea of something we wanted to do next as a comic suddenly got nudged aside for a year. Oh, we'll do it next year because now we're working on the toys. And they probably won't work. Who's going to watch the cartoon show and toys, right? And so then that got nudged aside and got nudged. So 5 years, 10 years, 15 years go by and we never got to it. And then just a lot had changed. The Turtles were sold, and then I started when IDW picked up the license in 2010. They brought me back in to work on the writing and be part of the series. And so we started there, and I was hoping maybe we'll get 12 issues, maybe 24 issues out of it. And so as we were getting close to issue 100, thanks to you guys, Tom and I said the same thing and said, well, where do we go after issue 100? This is now coming up on 10 years of doing it. I said, Pete and I wrote this story in 1987, which this discussion was had in 2018, which is a year after the original concept was written to take place. So it's originally written to take place in 2017. And so I said, we get this outline. I'm gonna dig it out and expand it and see if I can adapt it to here and now. And then Tom and I took that work, we really loved it, and expanded it even further into a 200-page story. And that's where we started in the Last Ronin. And we were sort of thinking like, well, if this sells at least as much as the regular series, that would be awesome. And then it just went crazy. Really resonated not only with the original fans, with a lot of fans that had come on board as fans of the IDW comics and all things Turtles, and it's just mind-blowingly cool, and we've had such fun doing it. We did The Lost Years, which is a bridge series leading up to Last Ronin 2, which the first issue comes out in December. So it was, yeah, man, what a journey, and what a great, it was a tough story to do, but it was the timeliness, and it was the perfect time to do that kind of story. So it was quite a treasure. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
We're gonna go all the way in the back, right? Yeah, you. That's we're gonna, and I'll get you next.
The other guy
But,
with the ridge.
Yeah,
Oh, there.
yeah. That guy. Let's go with the guy in the green, and then we'll get you in the red next. That's cool. Yeah, I'm going. Yeah, I gotta go. Give the guys, the bad kids in the back, some love. Yeah, your question. Yes, you.
Sorry, I was just kind of like always on eyes on me. What was your idea with the Power Rangers, and how did you get the Power Rangers and the Turtles from Fox Kids? What came up with, what idea, how did you get that idea together?
Well, it was actually a really fun idea because we had, you know, the Power Rangers kind of came a couple years after the Turtles, but not too far after, became popular as a cartoon series. And it was one of those things that was kind of similar in some of the approach, that you had a specific colored Power Ranger, like we had the different colored bandanas. So there's a lot of themes that were great and made it very natural for a crossover. And so when we were we were working with CBS to do the cartoon series, and when that ended, Chaim Saban, who owns and controls all things Power Rangers, took it over Fox Kids, and they wanted to do a live action series, which we worked on, and that opened the door to do a Power Rangers crossover. And I think they did a couple part series as a live action series, and then that whole thing ended, and it was up to, you know, and that sort of stayed in the background until recently, where Power Rangers have become popular again with, especially with comic fans, and so we partnered up with Boom, and have done a couple crossovers with that, and just fantastically good time to fun to do those as a series. So, but it was good fun, yeah. So.
Thank you. All right, you in the red. All right, you're next.
First of all, I want to say I'm a big fan of yours. Thank you. And I just want to know, what was like working with everybody on the Mutant Mayhem movie? I mean, what was it like working with Ice Cube? What was it like working with the next generation of actors?
I think they had, you know, I wasn't there for a lot of it, because those guys are like, I think sometimes that I'm busy, you know, some of those guys like Ice Cube and, you know, guys like Paul Rudd, and so, you know, they're going a million different directions all the time. So it was, a lot of them, they'd come into the studio, so they'd be playing up against, you know, so they'd just be having a good time sort of on their own. It was not, you know, you wish more often they could have the opportunity where they could record all together, because it was an ensemble kind of thing. But I think a lot of the people that came on board to do the project were aware of it and liked the Turtles. You know, knew that they were, you know, something that they had seen or the kids had seen and stuff. So it was, I think they did it because they really wanted to have, it felt like it would be something that'd be really fun for them to do. And I think it comes across in the actual film, is that the humor is there and it's fun. So if you haven't seen it, I mean, it's out on, I think, pay-per-view or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, streaming everywhere.
Yeah.
Only 5?
Thank you. Yeah. It's very funny. They did a good job on it. So. And I had a voice cameo in there too. I'm like, yeah, was it, you know, the guy that helped Splinter at that? There's a scene. Yeah, that's me. So.
All right, Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
You helped Jackie Chan?
I helped Jackie Chan.
I mean, like, how many people can say that?
Exactly.
I'm Asian. I've never helped Jackie Chan.
I'll see if I can hook you up.
How'd you find the voice acting experience? Was it your first?
No, I've done a bunch of.
Yeah,
actually,
I felt you did.
Yeah, I did a bunch, and I loved it. In fact, you know, one of my favorite cameos was I was in the first Turtle movie. It was great because I told everybody I was in the movie. There was like this scene where they were setting up the garbage truck scene. It was Squisher's shredder at the end, and so they wanted this garbage man to sort of walk out in front of this garbage truck in the background while this action scene was going on, and he's carrying a couple of garbage bags, and he looks down the street and sees what's going on, drops the garbage bags, panics, and runs away. So I told everybody I'm in the movie. So when you actually see the movie, you see this dark, shadowy blob kind of walk out like this and go back. And I said, "That was me.
That was me. Look, that's my arm.
That's my arm."
That's my butt.
Because I'm thinking there's going to be like a close up. I'm going to go
right. Yeah. Huh?
You know.
Yeah. Hey guys. Like.
And I was also in Star Wars as a stormtrooper. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, we all were.
So that was fun. It was fun. So I've done that in a couple of the projects and some voice stuff. But it was fun to do when they wanted me to work on the 2012 series. Cyril Neely, who's a fantastic designer and basically show ran that whole thing, and he said, "We want you to be kind of a cool, good guy or bad guy. We'll come up with something, and then they did this. We did this preview of things coming up in the cartoon series at San Diego Comic Con, and they were introducing this character called Ice Cream Kitty, which is a cat that eats some ice cream that had mutagen on it, and it becomes a cat made out of ice cream, a mutant cat. And I was like, I want to be Ice Cream Kitty.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we'll come up with something else. I said, no, like George Clooney was the dog in like South Park.
Yeah. So I want to be Ice Cream Kitty.
So I said, I want to be Ice Cream Kitty. So I got to be, so I just went into the booth and meowed for like 20 minutes.
So I love you exercised your pull. I was like, this is it.
I am
that
Ice
or-
Cream Kitty.
It's that or nothing, or I'm pulling the project. Like, okay, you can be Ice Cream Kitty. All right, calm down.
Yeah, so I'd wear a shirt that would say like, I am Ice Cream Kitty, and they make my wife wear a shirt that says, I'm with Ice Cream Kitty. She wouldn't do it.
It's gonna take over the world.
But it's good. Have you done that? You done
Some voice acting.
Yeah.
A couple lines in one of Kevin's silly animated movies.
Love it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I played Shower Bully #1. Yeah, I had to join the Screen Actors Guild for one day to do that, and I got like 50-cent residual checks from that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All that stuff they're fighting for right now, or yeah.
No, my credit in the new film is Good Human. So it was like
Good Human.
Yeah, Kevin Eastman is Good Human.
As Good Human.
Yes.
I mean, I'd say that about you in real life, anyways. So like, it's not just a role. Yeah.
It's a lifestyle.
He doesn't need to watch it. He lived it. Yeah. Anyone from this side? We'll go right here up front, and then I'll get you guys in the back. But you in the red hat.
Oh, great.
You, yes.
So,
You can stand up,
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about your years of heavy metal, actually. Any kind of stories or things that really stuck out to you? Any challenges?
Heavy metal was an amazing adventure in that about the time I started kind of growing out of comics a little bit. When I bought the first issue, came out in 1977, and around that time in the States, comics were regulated by what they call the Comics Code Authority, which was this regulatory system where they wanted to keep the content material for 12 years old and under, and so it was really, for juveniles, and so you love these characters, but it's sort of like, it's. And so along comes heavy metal, and it was a lot of the artists in the magazine were European cartoonists, Mobius and Belial and so many people. So it was comics written for an older audience. So it would be edgier science fiction, stories past, present, future. And so I got re-energized about comics. And it was just reinstilled in me that whatever you can tell, past, present, future, story-wise, you can do it in comics. And so through the success of the Turtles, I was able to spend some of the money I spent was to buy Heavy Metal magazine. And so I bought it in 1991 and ran it for about 20 years. And it was just a joy because it was I got to meet some heroes that were big influences when I was younger, and then keep carrying the mantle forward for comics. Because around that time you also had incredible creators like Alan Moore and Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons. So many people that would now. They're the guys that helped take away the Comics Code Authority and said comics are for, adults as well as kids. So it was really to help be part of that movement to bring it to where it is today. So that's fantastic.
Yeah,
So
just
I loved
for
it.
context, the code back in the day, you couldn't use the word zombie.
Yeah.
Like that's how strict it was. So if you read some of the older comics, it says Zuvembi instead of zombie. And I'm like, come on, Zuvembi.
Yeah, it was like
that's a
this
big joke now, but
Frederick Wortham, he was like the
Yeah.
same guy that they put out these movies like Reefer Madness
Yeah.
and all these things that were destroying the youth of America.
Right.
Comic books were destroying the youth of America.
yeah. Well, look at us. We all turned out all right,
See?
right? See. You white hat in the back. You still have a question? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question because it was as it was, I sold my rights to Pete around the, I was working on a number of other projects, so I sold creative share, then the rest of the share of all things Turtles to Pete in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. Then 4Kids was running it at that time. They did like the 2000 series, Fast Forward, that whole brand, which Pete oversaw that, which was fantastic, great series. We worked together on the 2007 movie. And then after that came out, Pete was sort of ready to retire. And so then he had sold, because I had sold out so he sold his interest to, let's say 2009, sold it to Viacom, which owns Paramount and Nickelodeon. And so Nickelodeon, Paramount, the whole organization then said, well, what do we do with it? And then they really put together a great plan where they then launched the new comic book series in 2010, 2011, the animated series. And at that time, we were also working on I was working with another company on the live action series, which then became something that was taken over by Michael Bay and became what it became. But so I was never, even when I didn't have, the Turtles have never been very far from anything I've done. And so it's sort of, I've always been in the background doing stuff, and then, with Nickelodeon, they've really brought me back to the front to do lots more stuff, and I've been having just such a great time. So, good
Awesome.
question.
You, right, second row, yeah, let's go you, yeah. Yep, no, you, yep, yeah, you.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you started making comic books, and what advice would you have for someone trying to start?
Sure. No, that's a great question. My mother, I think she tells a story where I think it's gotten greater as I've gotten older, as it's gone on. She said when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was drawing on the walls of the house with crayon. And but in reality, it's like from a very young age, it's like I really became enamored, loved kids' books. Dr. Seuss, P.D. Eastman, just as where the wild things are. So I loved the simplicity of, so I'd draw these pictures and I'd make up my own stories. That led to comic books. And then comic books are just like sort of a much, bigger continuation of, children's books. And I just loved them because it was the same thing I mentioned with like Heavy Metal magazine. It just, and one guy in particular I really became my hero was a guy named Jack Kirby, who created most of the Marvel Universe, even the stuff that Stan Lee claims he did. No.
It's a long story.
It's a long story.
Watch the Netflix documentaries, but
No, but put it this way, it's like, they created it together, and it's like you couldn't have one without the other. But Jack was incredibly creative, and I just liked that he was also he could write as well as he could draw, and that's what I loved was that whatever I could think of, story-wise, past, present, future, I could tell it if I could write it and draw it. And so that was really where I just became obsessed to the point where my parents were sure I would probably be one of those kids that never moved out of the basement kind of thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything. He just stays in his room and draws all the time. But so I was always very passionate about it, and it was, even, people have said, if you didn't do the Turtles, what would you have done? And I said, I would have done something in comics. There was just no way I wouldn't do anything else. That was really what I wanted to do. And so people have asked me, a lot of times, like, how did I get from that side of the table to this side of the table when we're doing signings and events? And it's like, it's anything you apply to your schoolwork, or say if you're interested in music, or an athlete, or drawing comic books. You have to find time to do it for you, if that's your passion, to do it every day. Even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because it's the only way you get better. And even, when I look at the first issue of the Turtles, the longest story, because Pete was the same way as I was, very obsessive about it. He both wrote and drew as well. The longest stories I'd ever done was probably 8 or 10 pages stories on my own pre-Turtles. So when we did 40 pages of Turtles, you can see the improvement in our drawing skills just in that first issue over the course of that first issue. Then we were lucky enough to do it full time, and so suddenly we're not doing 3 jobs and then drawing on the side. It was drawing full time. But up until that time, it was, night classes when you could afford them and do them, life drawing classes, but spend time doing it and put the work in, and it'll pay off. So.
Yeah, then do it because you love it. So.
And yeah, if the passion's there, even when your friends, like when I was called a geek in high school, it wasn't a positive thing like
No,
it is now.
yeah, now it's cool, right?
Yeah, we didn't have Big Bang to make it.
Yeah, right, or comic book man,
Comic book
or
man.
Teenage
Oh,
Mutant
comic-
Ninja Turtles. Yeah,
exactly.
man.
So it was like, yeah.
We'll go you next.
So for the 90 Trilogies movie, there was a couple ideas for a 4th movie.
Yep.
And for one of the 4th movies, you had an idea for another turtle. I think his name was Kirby.
Yep.
And you had it came colored masks. Can you like kind of go into what his character would have been or could have been?
Yeah, it was something that, we were working with New Line Cinema still at the time, and they had done the third movie and still were interested in doing a fourth. And so we developed an idea where we said, well, we wanted to bring another turtle in. It's something we thought about a few times in the past, and very loosely it was sort of, there were originally, say, 5 turtles in the terrarium that fell into the sewer. One of them sort of got washed further downstream and, grew up completely differently. It was more of a dark side of the turtles. So we'd have a black mask, black bandana, and we adapted that into Slash later in the IDW series. But we developed this project into a full final screenplay, and New Line decided they didn't want to pursue it as a movie anymore. And as that ended, it was around the time they started talking to Saban about the live-action series. And so we brought the movie concept and said, well, we've had this idea for this 5th turtle named Kirby. And so through the early development of the cartoon series, it was Kirby, 5th turtle added, named Kirby. And then Margaret Lesh, who was running Fox Kids at the time, said, well, why don't we make it a girl turtle? And I said, I'm a huge Sarah Connor, Lieutenant Ripley, just huge,
strong female character, yeah.
love it. So I said, yeah, that sounds great. Peter was not as in love with it as that. And it was one of those sort of like, I'm not digging this at the moment. So he sort of stepped aside a little bit, and I ran that's where we created Venus de Milo. And I love that series. It was, I spent a lot of time on it. I worked on it hard, and it was, but I think it was force-fed to the fans. I think it was wasn't as an organic evolution and introduction to the characters. So I think it was, people were really resistant, and we hate that series, even more than the Michael Bay movies. No. So I love Venus as a character, and that's where she developed. And so what's interesting is when I started working with IDW, and I worked with this incredible writer, Tom Waltz, who's a head writer on the series. From very early on, we got into year 2 of the series, and he said, I want to find a way to bring a female turtle back into the fold. So it took us, another 60 issues to do it, but it was that's where we brought in Jenica, so it's good. So
Amazing.
Yep.
You got one?
Yeah, so you spoke about how this originally was like gonna be a one-off.
Yep.
When did you realize it was gonna be huge? It was just gonna go off like you couldn't have imagined?
Well, that was the thing we never did, in that it was, that's what's the beautiful part about it is, the fact that, going back to the first comic, we did that, and it was thanks to an uncle who loaned us $1,200 to print the first 3,000 copies. That sort of put it out there, and then because we actually Peter and I actually thought we'd probably never sell enough of the first issue to pay him back. But this weird thing happened. It started selling, and then we were like, holy smokes. And then we did a second printing of 6,000 copies, and that sold out. And at that time, I'd already had to go back to cooking lobsters for the summer. And so that fall, we were getting a lot of letters, people asking, well, when are you going to do a second issue? And we said, well, we never thought we'd sell enough the first issue to do a second issue. And so that fall, we started working on a second issue, and we put it out in January of '85. We sold 15,000 copies, and that was mind-blowing because we did some quick calculations and figured that we'd make about $2,000 each profit off a 15,000 copy press run, and if we did 6 of these a year, we could actually draw comics for a living, quit all those other side jobs, and just do that. So in '85, we quit all the other jobs and just started drawing turtles, and each issue, the sales went up, and that was like, wow, this is amazing. And not long after that, somebody approached us and said, hey, we think this would be a great cartoon series and toy line, and we laughed out loud. Yeah, right.
Well,
what are you drinking?
That worked out. That kind of worked out.
That worked out. So yeah, so like the first, because even it was like they wanted to dip their toe in, so like with the first cartoon series, they only did 5 episodes. Yeah. But we had David Wise and Patty Howarth was the help adapted into the comic series. Chuck Lorre wrote the theme song.
Yeah.
You knew that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And they put it out in this over Christmas break in 1987, that holiday break between Christmas and New Year's, and the ratings were huge, and that led to another 8 episodes to make it a full 13 episode season for the fall of '88. based on the success of the cartoon series, Playmates pulled the trigger on the toys, which came out in June of '88. And to the point, 2 points I like to bring up, sort of how I rated the success of the Turtles. One was when we knew we had something bigger than we ever imagined. Is when the toys came out, we went down to KB Toys down in Springfield, Mass, to see them actually on the shelves.
Yeah.
And so just as we get to the action figure section, this mom's kind of dragging this young boy out of the action figure aisle, saying, "No, I'm not buying you one of those stupid Ninja Turtles."
Success. Success.
And then my favorite part was my grandmother, and bless her, even into my 20s, she would still send me a card with $5 in it for my birthday and for Christmas. And then, which was awesome. I'm like, Graham, I'm good with but she was watching Jeopardy one night, and the Turtles were a question on Jeopardy. And so she felt that I was successful enough, she didn't have to send me
It's like, Alex Trebek said
$5 anymore.
Said your name. It's like, yeah, Grandma, like, yeah. It's the little things, man.
It's a little thing.
It's the little things.
But yeah, what a ride, man. Yeah, it's really fantastic. So.
It's awesome. Did you still have a question?
Yes.
Okay, then okay, next.
So that first issue is, I mean, that was your very first comic?
Yep.
And it's so tightly plotted.
Mhm.
I mean, the art and the story, beginning, middle, end.
Thanks.
And I know you were planning on, you didn't know it was going to happen, so that's part of the reason. But when you're coming up with a story, or like after that, like you have the big, going to the farmstead and all that stuff.
Yep.
I mean, was that something you kind of just plotted issue to issue, or did you have a climax in mind, or like how did you plot and come up with your story arcs?
No, that's a good question, because there was, the format, and actually even the size of the comic was, in part, the size was kind of a mistake, because we found this printer where we lived in New Hampshire that did these, it was like a 40-page, it was called the TV Fax. It was like a leave behind. You'd get them for free at the local convenience stores in New Hampshire that would have TV, channel listings, and local advertisement. And so we found the printer, and it was this 40-page book, and we said, we want to do a comic this size. And so the first issue, we knew we had 40 pages to fit as much story in it as we could. So we packed it to a full beginning, middle, and end. The introduction of the Turtles, their origin, the bad guy, all the key characters, and then ended it where it left the door open, but it was kind of a final ending. And so when we got the chance to do issue 2, it was like, what do we do? And so Pete and I, we just sat down and we'd talk about the idea for a week or two, and then we'd handwrite it out, and then I'd start doing the breakdowns, the layouts, and so we'd back it in. We loved the issue being larger, like the first issue was 40 pages, so with issue 2 is 37 pages, I think, 38. And so, because you get so much story in there. So we plotted issue 2 in the same fashion, complete beginning, middle, and end story with the door open to go into a second part. And so that sold. And so we started in issue 3. It started getting silly because it was like, we suddenly realized we could do anything we wanted to for a story, and with our characters. And so I told Pete, I've never seen a car chase in comics. And he said, yeah, because it's stupid.
Let's do it.
So I said, no, we're going to do it. I said, I want to do a car chase, like and so we ended up, making the story where, something had happened in the previous issue that led to, it was going to be a complete story, and April comes and gets him the van, and there's this whole car chase. And it was so much fun to do. And then as we're getting to the end, he said, well, let's, we now are selling enough copies, let's write something that we continue into the next story. So we did an epilogue in issue 3, which led into issue 4. And so then that was it. So each one was written completely on the fly. And so by the time we get to issue 4, we said, well, let's do we were selling enough copies. We were such huge fans of Star Wars. We said, well, let's take our characters out of space, and anybody goes like, what is wrong with you guys? It's like so we tried to do it. There's enough Star Wars isms in there that Lucas probably could have sued us if he wanted to, but he didn't.
No, he didn't.
He didn't. So it was written, like that for a while. So I think the longest arc was 4 issues, like 4, 5, 6, and 7 that it ended, and then we did another continuing thing that wrapped up in issue 11. So it was, we just made it up on the go. We had nobody, we were answering the phone, we were the secretaries, we packed the boxes, we did every aspect of the series and having a great time.
Yeah, also talent, my friend. Talent. Yeah. You got time for one more?
How are we doing on time?
I mean, we're a little over. You
They're
got
kicking
time?
us out by midnight. We got
Oh,
till
midnight? Yeah. Well, I want to get you back to your table, so you
yes,
can,
actually, we're gonna go straight.
Yeah, you got time for one more? So, all right, what do you got? Make it good.
What inspirations did you draw from Commandy? And if you didn't draw any, what did you draw from for inspiration for the TMNT series?
Did you mention Commandy? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and it's very true. Is that I mentioned earlier one of the first. Is my wife.
Courtney Eastman, everybody.
We
Courtney
do.
Eastman.
Yay! Actually, yeah, she did the voice of April on one of the cartoon episodes. We did this Pizza Friday. So the Commandy, the first movie I ever saw in the theaters, I mentioned earlier, was Planet of the Apes, and it was the apes were after this great disaster, the apes ruled, and the humans were reduced to this sort of animalistic creatures. And so when Jack Kirby started Commandy, it's on the same theme. Instead of just apes, it was all kinds of animals. There was this great disaster, and I just loved it. It was like I was a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid in a very small town in Maine. Felt like I was the last boy on earth. Sometimes there were so many farms around us and everything. So I love the idea of mutant animals as a thing, and that was very inspirational. And that was again Jack Kirby did that. And so when the idea of the Turtles emerged, I think it was a combination of Peter and I picking our favorite things in comics, the superhero, X-Men, mutant, Fantastic Four sort of isms, what Frank Miller, Daredevil was always my favorite as a comic. I like Daredevil and Batman were two of my favorites, stealing a lot of stuff from Frank Miller, ninjas and things like that, which then the martial arts theater, as I mentioned, really the Asian martial arts influence and culture was really fascinating. And so we kind of stole everything and our favorite things and put them in a blender, and that's what then became the Turtles. It was like, Teenage Mutants, you could point to New Mutants and X-Men and all that, to animal characters from Commandy all the way up through to Turtles was, I grew up in like I said, a small town in Maine, and my grandmother lived on a lake, and there was this runoff on the lake that had turtles in it, which I thought were these great dinosaur-like living dinosaurs. And so, everything big, borrowed, and stolen.
Yeah, and now you have a property that other people will be inspired from.
Yeah, you should.
And you should be pretty proud of that.
Yep,
So yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. My friend, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Ming. Always a pleasure.
Welcome to Memphis Comic Expo, the Mid-South's truest Comic-Con. And I'm rocking the OG Team Eastman shirt. Always proud to be Team Eastman. If you had a question that you didn't get answered, go see him at his table. You're here today and tomorrow?
Yes. I think
Okay,
we're-
well then you got plenty of time
Yeah.
and no excuse to go see the legend. So
Hey.
Kevin Eastman, everybody,
Thank
give
you
it
very
up for
much.
Kevin
Appreciate
Eastman.
you very much. Thank you, Ming. That was
Thanks, man.
awesome.
Thank you, dude.
I appreciate it. So,